So this poet is looking for a better word than ironic, that today is both the celebration of the birth of Martin Luther King and the inauguration of the next US president. I read today in a playful piece in the New York Times. It was called Dear Earthling, and it was a tribute to Raoul Minot, who took photos for the French resistance in Nazi-occupied Paris. And the author wrote, and this is with a little tweaking by me, quote, "When one's rights are stripped away, I found that art is a helpful tool to take back control of one's sense of self. No matter how small, quiet, or private the expression, art can move the needle in fighting for our collective freedom. May every kite flown, soup seasoned, photo taken, canvas filled, note played, quilt sewn, and poem written push us forward into a kinder and freer world." So I'm Katie Sarazale, and one of the 8 editors who came together about 5 weeks ago to give birth to Winter in America Again. And this title is a tribute to Gil Scott-Heron's song of the same name. The inception of this anthology began with recollection of Sam Hamill's anthology, Poets Against the War. I was deeply concerned about U.S. domestic issues, Gaza and Ukraine, and the U.S. culpability for problems around the world. I remember during the Arab Spring when Wael Ghaem joined the movement following the killing of Khalid Said under Mubarak's regime in Egypt. And he said, "I am Khalid. We are Khalid." So I thought, I am Sam. We are Sam. So following the US presidential election, I contacted Paul Nelson and suggested a call for poems. Well, he jumped on the idea, as Paul does, for those of you that know him, and he shouted, "Yes, we can get a book out before the inauguration." And I thought, whoa, but you know what? We did it. So in a call for poems, we used Sam's words, quote, "These are the voices of our poets, and they come from every segment of society. They also celebrate our country by expounding a compassionate view of the universe. A government is a government of words, and when those words are used to mislead, to instill fear, or to invite silence, it is the duty of every poet to speak fearlessly and clearly." So close to 300 poets responded to the call, and Greg Bem's Carbonation Press agreed to publish, and Roberta Hoffman created the cover based on an image by her son Jasper. So we editors work day and night. I'm not kidding, day and night, reviewing the submissions, foregoing time with friends and family and even work over the holidays. And I give thanks every day for their committed hearts. So this anthology is our gift to you for showing up during this uncertain time. Paul?
Well, I just want to say that working with this group has been amazing. Working with Greg Bem is amazing. He works very, very quickly, and that's kind of the speed I prefer. I'm blown away by the quality of the work in it and the wide variety of poetics that are represented. And I think it honors Sam very, very well. And I also think it's one small step in the right direction for responding to the political situation that we have today. And that being, well, that being rather obvious. So I don't need to, I don't need to go into it. I just, I just say that I'm grateful that everyone is here tonight. I'm grateful that we have such a beautiful book, and I hope that it makes a difference in the world, as I hope that all the poetry activities I engage in, that they're transformational, that they create a difference in the world. And I love that we sought something that a little more difficult, a little deeper than bad person's a bad person and what have you. I mean, I hear a lot of that, and I don't think that rhetoric works, and it hasn't worked. So we're trying something different, trying to come from a place that's deeper than a reaction. Poets respond to the election, not poets reacting. So I'm grateful that the co-editors shared that. And of course, there's always discussion whether those qualities are being met in a particular poem, but I'm very happy with what came out and very honored to be part of it. And kind of stunned by how quickly it came together. So thank you, all the editors, or many of whom are in the room tonight.
And it will be very clear in the preface to the book is the criteria that we use for choosing poems. And one thing, as Paul has alluded to, we wanted to choose poems that went beneath, beyond the anger that all of us are feeling. And so that was one of our guiding principles. I'd like now to ask Roxy Power if she will just share a little bit about what the experience was of being an editor on this project.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. And when you asked me this afternoon, I was just high on drumming and singing at, the People's March. And so forgive me if I have, I'm reading this aloud. So first, thank you, Paul Nelson, for inviting me to be part of the editorial board. Paul's the great collaborative spirit of Cascadia Poetics Lab that brings poets together around Seattle. And now his reach has moved outward through those he and Katie tapped to help them find, um, you know, poet editors and poets in their communities, poet editors to help them make decisions for this anthology and to tap poets in our communities. So my poetry communities, not unlike this book, are somewhat diverse, but you could say that the lineages all trace themselves back to one of tonight's guiding spirits in the reading, another Paul, Hoover, and his groundbreaking postmodern American poetry. Paul Hoover was also one of the guiding spirits for the anthology collection I edit, Viz Inter Arts, which took me more like 6 years rather than 6 weeks to put together. Whew. So with very little time between the late November call, the mid-December deadline, and the January 20th publication date, the poets that I tapped quickly ponied up with some beautiful work. I think Hoover's poem came in first, and you really need to stay to hear it. And then Brenda Hillman, a friend of mine, and Paul Nelson's, Bill Lavender, what a poem, Bill, Andrew Schelling, Elizabeth Robinson, Rodrigo Toscano, Matthew Cooperman, Abby Copang, Mark Vincennes, Cassandra Atherton, Gloria Frem, Petra Cuppers, Mark Noack, too many, can't list them all. Maxine Chernoff and Julian Talamentes Brolowski, who just wrote to say they can't make it tonight, sadly, but what a rich gathering. And those are just the people that I tapped. There's so many more poets in the book besides that I came to know and really appreciate. My editorial experience, well, it was a condensed furnace of democracy, being in a small room with folks you don't know for hours a day for a few weeks, not really making life and death decisions, though sometimes poets act like they are, but, doing some respectful poet lawyering, in my case, making arguments on behalf of folks who might be, well, a little experimental for some tastes. But the beautiful part was finding that between the 8 editors, different, what's that? I prosecuted a case. Not all of my cases got prosecuted well, but that we were able to open up to one another and create a community of poets across differences of style, region, poetics, tribes, kind of like what we are going to have to practice now. So thank you, comrades. I'm going to name you: Aliyah Abdullah Mata, Gabriela Gutierrez Moose, Robert Lashley, C. Christy White, Teresa Whitehill, and of course, Paul and Katie and the amazing Greg Bem for creating this forum for us all, and who's very patient, implementing my 1,000 edits as we rush to the publication finish line. And I just wanted to say this project felt somewhat reminiscent of an event I co-organized at UC Santa Cruz called Poetry in a Time of Crisis with Leslie Scalapino and Juliana Spar years ago. They brought Joanne Kiger, Eileen Miles, Nathaniel Mackey, and others to figure out, like the Situationists, whether poetry could change the situation and what about poetry could do that. And this was on the eve of George W. Bush's invasion of Iraq. Scalapino, of course, helped change the way that we read or look for meaning that confirms what we already believe or feel. Spar helped us critique the poetry institutions that are part of the problem, and Kiger helped us to look for humor and spirituality. And while this project has its origin story in the tribe of Sam, Hamill, vis-a-vis Katie, I'm grateful that other tribes are neighborly in this book. Like the Santa Cruz Poetry Reading and Podcast group that I belong to, the Hive Poetry Collective, our mission is to bring all kinds of poetry by all kinds of people. Um, yeah, it's, I bring my labor activist self into the group, probably annoying at times, trying to create egalitarianism, and to move beyond what Brenda Hillman has called the ego project, which is doomed to failure. And both Paul and I have been quoting that back and forth to each other a lot lately, trying to work to that lesson, both in process and product as the book and now the readings unfold. And so we hope that you'll stay in touch with us, come to our readings, 2 in Santa Cruz, the AWP, some in the Bay Area, Seattle, Tucson, Lit Balm. Thank you, Mark Vincennes and Cassandra Atherton, as you listen to the words from a very diverse gathering tonight. And hopefully once you buy the book, we'll all keep gathering in that spirit. And so sorry that I didn't have time to edit that. I think, yeah, that's it though. Thank you.
Yeah. Before we start the reading, I would love to hear from a publisher that we adore, Mr. Greg Bem.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wow, 94. You're all amazing. Thank you for being here tonight, spending the evening of MLK Day with all of us in celebration and recognition of the book. I'll just say a few things about Carbonation Press. Carbonation is a small press located on the lands of the Spokane tribe, which many of you know as Spokane, Washington, here in the United States. It's not a not-for-profit or a for-profit organization, but it's an ongoing hybrid publication project that was started in late 2023 when I first moved here. Since it was founded, Carbonation has published 7 individual author titles, most recently Found Confetti by Seattle-based Ria Molina, with other works including collections by the Cambodian refugee, poet, and painter Chat Pierce Sat, who lives in Massachusetts, our very own Paul E. Nelson, Eric M. Acosta, Catherine Owen in Canada, and Zachary Charles, who I believe is also here tonight. Forthcoming works include a bilingual collection by the Brazilian author Flavia Rocha, the Taiwan-based Alex O. Bleeker, Matt Treese, who read yesterday and is in the anthology, Teresa Whitehill, who also read yesterday and helped edit the anthology, and the Spokane-based David Klenda. I created Carbonation after years of supporting small press activities around the world, as well as leading small publishing projects of my own, which were often tied to conceptual performance events in Seattle and Philadelphia. Carbonation supports writers and artists in the publication of their unique and oddly sized works, though it now tends to focus mostly on longer works with additional literary components like interviews, prefaces, and other dialogic elements. We aim to publish the work of writers spanning different genres and forms in ways that encourage publisher-author collaboration and support aspects of smaller literary communities and are overly anti-capitalist in nature. Each publication has limited runs and can be supported with online distribution. We strive to seek out and include diverse voices, and as with this anthology's release, argue openly against neutrality. I personally believe in the power of responding to the myth of political and social neutrality through, as previously mentioned, compassion, as well as elegance and intellectual discourse. And I think back on the many anthologies I've read and engaged with, including while working on this anthology, this book, which you may or may not be able to see, Picking Off New Shoots Will Not Stop the Spring, which is an anthology of poets and essayists from Myanmar, published in a couple years ago. As I think back about all of the different anthologies I've read, I recognize the immediate impact and staying power of the collective of voices. To allude to Cecilia Vicuña's work and the concept of the palabrarma, or word weapon, these words hold their function both now as well as decades from now. Concerning the process of working on Winter in America, again, a true phenomenon of a project. It's been an honor to work alongside all of the editors who were mentioned a minute ago, as well as Roberta's amazing work and Jasper's amazing image, which is the cover image, as well as inside the book. And of course, all of the writers who submitted and whose work were included in the book. I'll just skip forward because I know we have a lot of readers here. Please stay in touch with me through my website. We don't have a Carbonation website yet, but gregbem.com is where you can find all the info about it. And despite our tech oligarchy, we are continuing to share on Instagram via @Carbonation Press, and I'll put the links to those in the chat. If you have spaces you want Carbonation to share or be part of, please just let me know. Happy to work on being local, being communal, and seeing where we go from here. With that, thank you so much. I'll turn it back over to Katie and Paul.
I hope everyone can see the list of names, the readers in the chat. And as well, though, we will do a little, Roxy's going to start us out and just kind of give us a free writers to be on deck for, for reading. Is that?
Oh yeah, apparently we're honored to now introduce, and I think really Paul should probably be introducing Jason Worth.
All right,
And
I'll do
do
it.
that.
Let me just say that if you haven't muted yourself, please do so that we don't have any background noise. Jason Worth is the chair of the philosophy department at Seattle University. He's written many books, including one about Gary Snyder and Dogen and life at this time of global climate chaos. He's a close personal friend of mine. He lives here in the neighborhood. He gives legendary tours of Kubota Garden that are just really an amazing experience to have, to hear about the garden, its history, the history of racism against Japanese people in this community, the spiritual stance of Fujitaro Kubota. Jason is a remarkable human being, and I love that we have his piece in the book. So he's going to talk. He's not going to read his whole piece, but he's going to talk about it. Please welcome Professor Tetsuzan Jason Worth.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you all for having me. What an honor it is. My little piece is the afterwards, or the very last thing you'd read in the book, and somehow I've been able to swing that into being the very first thing you hear tonight, Zen trick. But really, it's an incredible honor, and I just want to give you a little tiny taste of my afterword. It's a reflection on one of the more unfortunate teaching stories in the history of Mahayana Buddhism, which is the teaching of Mappo. Mappo was the belief, and it's easy psychologically to imagine where it comes from, but it's the belief that we're just screwed. This is an age in which everything is fallen and dark, and there's nothing we can do, and the Dharma will not be heard, and practice will be futile, and there's nowhere to go but inner migration and give up because we're doomed. And I get it. I mean, Trump hasn't even been president for a day, and we're already out of the Paris Accords again. Those things were already too little, but not even to have that, it's painful. But hiding behind the notion of a decadent age, that's what Zen master Dogen in the 13th century said. That's exactly what Zen is not. He was among the only people ever to just step up and say, we need to stop thinking like this because it simply is not Zen. And in my little essay, I quote a few lines from an Albert Saijo poem that really pushes us more in a different direction about the Bodhisattva vows. Saijo's words: Bodhisattva vows to be the last one on the sinking ship. You sign up and find out it's forever. Passenger list endless. Ship never empties. Ship keeps sinking, but doesn't quite go under. It's Mappo again. It's winter in America again, because in some sense, it's always winter. That's why we do things like Zen. And so this posture of exhaustion, of anger, resignation, of there's nothing we can do, of despair, Dogen responded that such a sentiment was rooted in a fundamental misunderstanding of practice. Given that the Dharma gates are boundless, there's always opportunities for practice. Practice is not a matter of accomplishment. The passenger list is endless. The ship is always sinking. And furthermore, practice is not a matter of achieving some future state in which we can perform superhuman deeds. The age in which everything is great, utopia is here at last. Even though we try as hard as we cannot supersede our limitations or those of our time. Dogen recounts that, and I quote, sages of the past did not necessarily have golden bones, end quote. That is, not everyone was capable of the historical Buddha. Now, who among us has golden bones? Each person is limited by their capabilities, and we can only do what we can. But it's a Dharma gate. This is our compassion. For Dogen, Zen would be the insight that our poems, our practice, our interventions, those are most needed in Mappo, most needed in hell. That's our opportunity. That's our calling. So I have more to say about that, but it's a little bit of taste. And I wanted to say thank you again very much. What an honor it is to be among such august company and such eloquent voices.
Thanks, brother.
And speaking of August company, Bill Lavender, who's writing a huge book on St. Augustine, it will be, I'm going to introduce the first 3 readers, and you'll see I'm just setting the pace here, which is to say, we're not going to be giving you all the introductions that you deserve. So even though I could say Abby Kopang was the poet laureate of Fort Collins, oops, I just said it. Mostly, we're just going to say your name. And then you're going to start reading, so I'm just going to remind the next 3 people that you're up one at a time. And that would be Abby Kopang, Angelica Rosierdo, and Bill Lavender. So Abby, are you ready, friend? Friend with patchy internet in Mexico? Okay, good.
Very patchy internet in Mexico. Happy to be down here tonight, to be honest.
Awesome.
All right, so 8 years ago, I realized I was very familiar with things such as the swastika, the hangman's noose, the Confederate flag, other symbols of hate, but that I didn't understand so many other symbols popping up on the internet and pasted on walls around me. So I dove into the Anti-Defamation League's Hate on Display database and learned many other symbols and engaged in them through poetry. I'll be reading 3 brief poems to you tonight from a project called 14 Words. And the first poem is now called 13 Words, but 14 Words is numerical shorthand for the white supremacist slogan known as 14 Words. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. 13 words for the 21st century. We must secure the existence of our planet and secure a future for all children. 2, Bound for Glory is the name of an African-American hymnal co-opted by a long-standing white power music band. Hang in there with me on this one. Bound for Glory. Long body Fuhrer, born dourly fog, Fuhrer bony gold. Goodbye, forlorn. Bold urn of orgy, bold urn of gory. Born old fury, go, born due for ugly. Nobly dog Fuhrer, nobly God Fuhrer, nobly drug roof, nobly dour frog. Burn, flood orgy, burn, flood gory. Burn godly roof, born goodly fro. Burn goodly for... Burn, Lord Goofy. Bold urn of gory, born old fury go, born is now due for ugly. And lastly, RAHOA. RAHOA is an acronym for a racial holy war, a term created by the creativity movement, a white supremacist pseudo-religion. RAHOA. RAHOA, a war. Oh, a war. Ho, a ra, ow, eora, Aha. Row. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Abby. And I do want to remind, I guess we have 40 readers supposedly, although some are not coming, but how about one poem each, even though that was like condensed together, part of one poem, and the next reader is Angelica. Are you here?
Yes,
That was
thank
beautiful,
you.
Abby. Thank you. Okay.
To stand on a Wednesday. The follied rose in my throat opens to acid. Sikmura is the only word for this, steadying over a sink in my mother's Tagalog. On the New York ferry, broken seats concede to commuting bodies. A district unfurled cannot quiet the scratching of pencils. Somewhere, a river empties its years. In a Pittsburgh I don't know, men with more arms than needed unload bagged ballots. Teacher angel friend fears wearing a shirt, showing her students she's the last safe adult. Drier flames than we have known could swallow this November. I shade all eyes from unfamiliar neighbors. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you. And Bill Lavender.
This is a poem. I wrote a series of poems based on St. Augustine's City of God. They began on the day of the insurrection 4 years ago. And I wrote the last one, at least in draft, on the same day, January 6th, last January 6th. But anyway, this one, book 22, chapter 26. And this is 5 November, Election Day. We watched an episode of something we immediately forgot, then turned off the TV. Quote from Augustine, "They shall never lose their bodies, even for the briefest moment, nor ever lay them down in death." End quote. Eros as the turning away sickened from Porphyry and Plato's forensic arguments. For democracy is kingdom of desire, pleasure and bondage, that hideous orange face on the flag. Morning after, at City Park and Canal, a guy slouches shirtless on the bench next to a heap of filthy bedding. Sister Natalie, the one-armed beggar, appears through a crack in the cemetery wall, lights a cigarette on the windless day. We're stunned, but not truly surprised, having secretly felt its inevitability, and now relieved we no longer have to pretend. Don't leave love out of the equation, a poet friend told me, but this might be something I'm not equal to. Augustine, too, of course, speaks of love, of using love to drive the Vandals from the gate. Caritas, for example, of conservative causes, Bernie Marcus leaves us billions to. Charity of calling that woke crap what it is. And as Trump assembles his cabinet, who's rubbing their palms? Or does it really matter which fungible token sits at which Office Depot desk? Like those North Korean soldiers taking into a Ukraine they've never heard of, drones on the front line, orders from the AI, and after the battle, those still living return to their benches. Thanks.
Fantastic. Brenda Hillman.
Thank you, Roxy. Thanks, everybody, for being here and for your wonderful work. Thanks to all the editors. My poem was written the day after the election. I never send things out very fast, but Roxy extracted it from me. I'm speaking of my mother in this poem. She died a few months before the election. The newspaper. Sunlight crosses the room, bearing elastic dust motes. Clouds graze steadily over the house. Trucks cross the suburbs. They've been cleared for departure. The mother scours the morning paper for facts and uplifting stories, laughing, almost a little snort. Maybe it's disbelief. Maybe it's puffs of air pushed out by her idea of God. In this line, it's the next century. In this line, the mother and her little laugh are gone. In this line, 2 ravens eat a carcass in Maryland. A hurried driver doesn't hit a fawn. The vote is being tallied, red seeping across the map and dripping from the thick finger of Florida into a sea of pre-named storms, the Red Sea rising, the small barge carrying corpses of fact and dream, their bones wrapped together in newsprint.
Boy, am I glad I extracted that. If that's what an editor is. Brenda, brilliant. And I don't know how many more I'm supposed to be introducing, but how about just one more and then back to you, somebody, Paul or Katie. Cassandra Atherton and Paul Hetherington, you have collaborated on an amazing prose poem for us. Would you be so kind to go next?
Yes, thank you so much, and thanks for having us in the Australian perspective. It's amazing to be, with such luminaries and to be here today. Ours is called Election Night Blues, and we'll read half each. Drinking margaritas in the bar of the Lenox Hotel, we dreamed of a future without global warming. Touching fingers, we had been chasing notions of love around a rim of salt and lime. As the bartender upended glasses in a tray of crushed ice, we spoke of the melting of Antarctica and of water climbing the steps of Venice's Rialto Bridge. On election night, with the TV shouting slogans, we stripped naked, feeling the evening's thick air upon us in a room that dreamed of liberty as a crossing of waters. When the Star-Spangled Banner played in a downstairs room, I wondered how many people still put their hands on their hearts. We lay on the bed, our intimacy surrendered to a map's patches of red.
2. Drinking martinis in the bar of the Lenox Hotel. You combed mauve light from my hair while we made lists of what we loved about America. I scrawled on a napkin blue plate specials, white gravy, baseball, the Martin's Tavern booth where JFK proposed to Jackie, red velvet cake, cherry pie, clam chowder, the changing of the guard at the tomb of the unknown soldier. You wrote heavy pause and the pronunciation of aluminium. After a long pause, you added CVS, Hershey's Kisses, and astronaut ice cream at the Smithsonian. After the election, we stopped making lists. When you breathed the American dream down my spine, I touched the hollow of my belly and asked, how is this possible?
Paul,
Sorry.
you muted yourself. How is this?
How is this possible? Sorry, we're at the airport, so there was an announcement going over.
I think that was a perfectly Freudian
Thanks so much.
glitch. Brilliant. Thank you. What beautiful voices. Paul, would you like to introduce some people?
Okay, sure. Why not? Do we have Chris Stroffolino in the house?
I am here under the name Lewis.
Oh, it's a trick.
No, it's my job. Anyway.
Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, it's a heteronym. It's This is a little thing I wrote actually the day of the election, pretty much. And it's called Is the Desire for Unity Divisive? And I dedicate it to other naive idealists, etc. As dictators shake off democracy chains, bling of accountability they wore like decorations of interdependence. To drain a wetland by calling it swamp and use earthquakes to get even richer. I pray to time in the Romance languages, not abstracted from weather, for a unity and diversity poem that could change minds or at least get the 99% to like each other better. Help America hug again. Ha ha. Ron Silliman says the only wall America needs is between church and state. It could also use one between Kay and Wall and Hollywood and Hacker Way to dam the waves and revolving doors with grassy undercommons. Thank you.
This is our second anthology together, Chris. Last time that you read for one was at City Lights with people that are, some of whom are still with us, but Michael McClure, Jerome Rothenberg. Were you going to play your piano to that tonight? Anyway, we can't keep going on like this. There's so many people. Continue on, Paul. I'll restrain myself.
Cynthia Hogue is next. Cynthia, welcome.
Thanks to all the editors, Roxy, Paul, Katie. So glad to be here with this poem I can't explain, but I will read. Plunder, November 6th, 2024. We plunder sunset, pests in the night. Who will buy our wares now? Who will find our chestnuts safe? I pine for my ignorance, which yesterday was a fence around my yard to keep out clouds. Clouds are weeds like dandelions, except you can't eat them. They slip through the baleen sieve of skepticism, no matter how voluntary is trust's interior consensus. All clouds play tag with beliefs, hopscotching over objections as facts mount. I pine for my ignorance. I hate that knowledge is wasted and belief a murder of size. Thank you.
Oh, I've been tagged by Paul to introduce the next poet, but that was beautiful. Belief, a murder of size. And our next poet, a buddy of mine, Dana Teen Lomax, all the way to us from Santa Barbara, Ventura,
Ventura. Yeah.
Ventura Highway in the sunshine.
Thank you, Roxy. Because my mom was a conservative fundamentalist Christian, and a lot of my family members, their lifestyles are threatened by the current political climate. I think a lot about how Mother Teresa doubted everything and said, if we have no peace, it's because we've forgotten we belong to each other. And I am still holding on to that idea. And at the same time, I deeply respect Greg's point, his statement against neutrality and what I interpret as the responsibility of our own integrity. I'll read my poem. The bigger picture. The in-between of the bigger picture, a path in petals instead of war, honeysuckle, jasmine scent strong as those we hold. Hands share the intimacy of an honest meal. Find our way toward one another, accepting every detail, because this nation of workers, dissenters, lovers is not lost. We hold to what we know, that care is the only way to agree. Bodies are bodies. Walt Whitman told us this centuries ago. Love root, silk thread, crotch and vine, breath breathing each other, even when in our desperation we forget.
Beautiful, Dana. I love the invocation of Whitman. Thanks for being here. The next three readers are Daniel W.K. Lee, David Allen Sullivan, and David Hellman, if they're in the house. Daniel W.K. Lee, can you unmute and read your poem?
Hi, thanks everyone for joining. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, this one is called Tent Massacre, May 26, 2024, Tel Al Sultan, Rafah, Gaza Strip. When we will missiles into makeshift shelters, survivors know to exhibit the charred to camera. So maybe something, somewhere, will stop letting us scorch their descendants into smudges. Today, a viral video of a non-fictional baby blackened and beheaded by bombardment is the latest breathless plea. I don't think our colluder-in-chief would lose a fleck of sleep if the only ways the fires would expire was to be smothered by the blood of Gazan toddlers. No red line, he dog whistled last month, meaning go ahead, repeat the unspeakable. The American soul is collateral, meaning we won't stop until we are where grace does not reach, what God cannot forgive.
Oh man, that when we read that line, scorched descendants into smudges.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Thanks for being here, Daniel. David Allen Sullivan, thanks for being here. Would you like to read your poem?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for everyone showing up and for creating this amazing anthology. I'm going to read Against Savage Machines. I've written a couple books about the Iraq War. And this is on the 15th anniversary of the Al-Mutanabbi Street car bombing in Baghdad, which destroyed the main street where books are traded and sold, which is now flourishing again. And it starts off with an epigraph from poet Abdul Bahi Farhullah, the day after the explosion. He says, "Those who did this are like savage machines intent on harvesting souls and killing bright minds. Whereof I speak pidgin Arabic, geek out on derivations of takhdim, to present something to someone, to raise hands up as an offering, a proffered kindness, as when someone's addressed as Habib, dear one, darling, soft pulled earlobe of God, whose attention we crave and always have. Love's love finding wing, a surrender to what's above, what's in us, what's always been, a kind of under singing to all our songs. Words can pull us together. Words can push us apart. And in their parting wake waves that make us stand and deliver a shiver of salt, a sliver of surrender to the cycloptic psyops that produce bumper crops of body parts, a tick-tocking bomb blast that turns flesh into missiles, shredding shrapnel that burns and burrows into others' fleshy folds. A dizzying, telltale trail of red letter days spelling out the blast radius that broke bodies on Al-Mutanabbi's bookseller street, where the sun's heat was preempted by the solar flare of a car bomb that eclipsed the prayer on the lips of the man whose finger fingered the detonator, who tore the day open like an end of the day Ramadan orange. Thanks.
Thank you, David. That is potent. David Hellman is next, followed by Dion O'Reilly and Elizabeth Robinson. David Hellman, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for all of the editors for the opportunity to all of us to express ourselves at this critical moment, this period of history. And so my poem here, I call it Repeat After Me. And I offer it as a kind of alternative oath of office for the, I could come up with all kinds of names for him, but I'll keep it short for the guy who just took the oath of office. This is an alternative oath, unlike probably not the one that he would want to do. It's an oath of office for a president who's badly in need of remediation and detention as well, I believe. But it's also a kind of a pledge of resistance, of protest, and maybe an antidote for the MAGA carnage that this new administration envisions. So repeat after me. Language is the construction of the world. I pledge allegiance to all notions on earth, no one foreign in the school I'm building, without halls, monitors, or trees, custodians, teachers, in the building I'm ruling, in detention. Love is the revision. I pledge allegiance to all nations on earth, no one alien in the country I'm building. In praise and protest, I erase the blackboards and the walls.
Brilliant, David. And next up is my sister in Santa Cruz and the Hive Poetry Collective. Give it up for Dion O'Reilly.
Thanks, Roxy. And thank you, the editors. I'm sure that was some heavy lifting to get that out so fast. But thanks for the effort, and thanks for all the listeners for showing up. So this little poem, I just want to say really quickly that I wrote this poem very quickly, unusual for me, word for word, transcribed right out of a dream that I had on election night. And I'm just really grateful that it's sort of like a little prayer created in the temple of my unconscious. I'm so glad it made it out into the world. Midnight, November 5th, 2024. I awaken and write what I saw. Churning mass, greenish black, moving this way like Yeats's beast, but full of song, of animal pain, as in the pain of birth. I saw it, heard it, and was strangely unafraid. Gorgeous orchestra, rich thickness like magma from an unknown soul on its way to take us. I knew it would be years or more before it passed. But when it does, we'll barely notice. No sudden silence, no grand relief as with a bump of morphine, sweet genie of opium released. No, it will be a loss of shock, imperceptible lightening of a long morning. If we're alive, we'll notice we're alive. Pat down our limbs to check each part. Then we'll hold each other's faces in our palms, make plain our love, no matter what we've done in our terror, in our rage.
Oh, soulful as hell. And very Cassandra-like, it's Cassandra Atherton, but God, like you're a prophet. I hope you're a prophet, and I hope you're right. And next, I feel like a little shy fangirl, one of my favorite poets, Elizabeth Robinson.
Thank you, Roxy, and thank you to the editors and the writers and all who are assembled here. I'm so grateful to be in your midst. I should say about this poem that I was trying to reach into absurdity as a form of resistance and defiance. From here on out, each day I pull something from my right ear. Doom scroll, thought bubble, burnt out light bulb, a wick of fur I set afire. My ear is a clown car, a vehicle I promise not to enumerate any further. And I might hear the dog sighing, the fan revolving, but nothing further, nothing could be further from the infamy I forswear to endure. Little wick burning, ears bursting cartoon clouds of steam all the way or all the time, a mind of smoke stoked by flat refusal to give way to fear.
Here's a clown car. I love that. I love that so much. That's fantastic. Beautiful. Our next poet lives here in Seattle, teaches at Seattle University, is on the board of the Cascadia Poetics Lab, has done several anthologies herself, so it was great to make her or to ask her to be a co-editor, to bring her along as part of this project. Please welcome mi hermana, Gabriela Gutierrez Imus. Gabriela. You have to unmute yourself for best results.
Thank you, Paul. My tears today are made of invisible ink, of invisible gunpowder. They are made of words. The name of my poem is Walking in Bed. I have walked thousands of miles under cactus, mesquites, huizaches, sweet acacia, and saguaros, walking on sand in my mind. I hold the hands of those children whose parents die without water or adequate shoes, children in tow, rosary in hand. I'm tired. Every night I carry children in my dreams for those Mexican, Haitian, Salvadoran, Honduran, African travelers, pilgrims, migrants. They're coming to see penguins, whales, sea lions, elephants at the Seattle Zoo, at Marine World, dogs at the farmer's market owned by the people who love them, eat whole wheat bread, gluten-free bowls, meatless dishes, organic vegetables, and are mostly kind. 20 years later, these children will care for you, will feed you spoonfuls of cariño in your future when you can no longer walk. Fear that my shoes in dreams are no longer repairable. This election speaks a 4-year nightmare for children on the tightrope of immigration, abandonment, child labor in the USA, where life for the poor and the immigrants is Disneyland still. Thank you.
Gabriela, thank you. This goes right to the heart. And next up is a Bay Area treasure and friend, Gloria Frem. And to borrow, I guess, Brenda Hillman's mode of escaping all of this hell, a baseball metaphor, on deck is Hillary Sedaris and Jim Dott. Gloria.
Thank you, Roxy, and thank you, editors, because I know you worked very hard on this anthology, and I've heard some wonderful stuff tonight. This is called Double Air. Night falls fast in late fall. Some crow barks furiously. This is the age of fire. This is the age of murdering what's not you. We can't beat the atrocities. We begin to suspect nefarious plots. Veterans from perpetual war mourn through the gun. Lives stand loaded. Lone wolf's tactics. Welcome, chaos. Fear gears up its fearful symmetry. Another crow barks. A mockingbird imitates the crow. Someone paints a red swastika on a tribute to the dead shot down in prayer. Someone paints a swastika on a teacher's door. Someone paints a swastika on the face of America. What is in this derelict air? Grief is a dare. Thank you.
Thank you. That was beautiful. Good evening, everyone. I'm Aaliyah Abdelhamada, one of the editors, and I'm going to introduce the next person, Hillary Sedaris.
Thank you. It's great to be here. My poem is called O mia patria, si bella e perduta, which is, oh, my homeland or my country, beautiful and lost. It's from the opera Nabucco. What can he do? His mom loved Mussolini, not only as a girl, but when she died at 92. Did she romanticize her fascist Juventud? Was she ecstatic about Addis Ababa? Vincenzo says she was hungry. Il Duce put pane on her plate, carne in her pan. Amore, your country too, he says, as Verdi's chorus sings of a homeland. Shh, I say, zitto. He understands, has pietà. It happens at all, he said. He smiles, meaning all empires fall. Thank you.
We love your work, Hillary. Thank you for being part of this book. Fantastic. We've got Jim, then Joy Dubay, and Judith Hoyer. Jim Dott is an Astoria, Oregon poet, and he's contributed to the Cascadia Poetics Lab. He has a book coming out on Watershed Press in the next year. Watershed Press is the literary imprint of the Cascadia Poetics Lab and has published Cascadian Zen Volumes 1 and 2. It's my pleasure to welcome Jim Dott to the Zoom room. Jim.
Thank you. This poem the title is from two songs, but one by Richard Hawley and one by Toots and the Maytals. There's a storm a-coming, pressure's gonna drop on you. Our apple trees hold their still green leaves into late November. Wannabe evergreens in the new regime of the Anthropocene. Then the pressure drops. A bomb cyclone clips our coast, blasts them loose, sails them across the yard, into the gutters, down the street. Brief, rainless respite, glimpse of the waning moon at dawn. Then another storm wheels in off the Pacific. Its peace, always ephemeral. Bringing rivers of rain, dumping ocean onto land, seems bent on washing every riverbank, hillside, and garden out to sea, to sift down and sleep for eons on the ocean's bed. Can you find peace in knowing that a long, long, long time from now, these sediments will be lifted into new mountains, be slowly, slowly eroded into gentle hills and fertile soils? Another storm's a-coming. Pressure is going to drop again. How will each of us weather it? And the next one, and the next. Alone like heron, hunched on a piling, head under wing. Like a float of coots riding it out on the bay, tails to the wind. Or a flock of gulls flapping hard to fly straight into it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on deck is, oh, I lost it. I think you have it. Joy Dubay, Judith Hoyer, and Julia Chiapella.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm on Vancouver Island in Canada. Thanks for including me as a Canadian. Yeah. After the election, the great untethering. A few hundred years from now, there will be shiny stainless steel made in the USA dishwashers, free floating in space. Occasionally, they will bump into other shiny objects, matching fridges and stoves, plasma screen TVs, rubbing shoulders with bread boxes, saddlebags, plant pots, coffins unearthed from graveyards. All that shaking, vibrating, blinking lights and beeping of the distant past. The satisfying hum that grounded and soothed us, now hushed and floating in the void. Even the dishwater's dirty water, coaxed along by iridescent soap bubbles, will have joyously evaporated, bonded into new molecules of hydrogen and helium. The museum of the future will be stardust and black holes, gravity come undone, and American-made dishwashers orbiting noiselessly around Earth's blue husk. Thank you.
Roxy?
Okay. Oh, okay. It is time. It's guess whose time it is. So we see that Julia Chiapella is next, but Julia, would you be your usual gracious self and allow Mark Vincennes to go before you because he has to leave? Mark, are you ready? You're always ready, aren't you, Mark?
I try my best. The strong man's diptych. For dictators, despots, and other deep panhandlers. Act 1. Striking the balance of power. Whatever you do in business, you can always smooth things along by deftly offering a little nudge. A green-tinted bottle of something sparkly and fabulous. A carton of your very own backhanded best. You can, in the eyes of a beholder, be beholden. You may also try to strike a balance, despite your own misgivings, and reach out to the most mosquito-infested frontiers and discover their fieriest armpits, the wow in their factor of 64, or when besieged, another 1 in 3 of 87 palms greased. Or simply stand on your head, reciting flowering polemic and crude rhetoric, or calling upon their memes and their plebes. You may discover everything you've divested in diverges somewhere at the edge, and you work in a sense of drama you can call upon. At any given instant, live bait works best, and at some stage you might want to let slip the truth. But no one will ever know, since it is considered to be fluff, fake news, or faulty propaganda. And night and day, whatever and whomever touch with those golden fingers will be singing to your missives all night long. Act 2. A second, more succinct security apparatus. Divest. Spread things around a little bit, hedge, nudge, and fudge. Put forward principles that speak to a common people. Own your own penis and gallop poles. Own your own tight wad of cash. Spread them around munificently, and everyone's economic will shall upswing. They say, though you can't question your rulers, you may rumble in your deep sleep. And even though eye contact is difficult to sustain, the long-term implications are endless. Those in the long loop know everything is a teary-eyed bullet train or a wide-eyed rocket ship. Everyone wants to leap aboard. But when it's stalling, they scramble for a deep break. Why, after all, is it not transactional and simply transactional? Let us leverage All this for our healthy benefit. Thank you.
Let's leverage whatever we can for our healthy benefit, including owning our own penises if we have them. But I made a mistake in the order. Judith Hoyer, please forgive me. You are next, followed by Julia Chiapella. Judith?
Yeah, no problem,
Thank you.
Roxy. I'm here from Wayland, Massachusetts, and I thank everybody who put this wonderful anthology together, and thanks for the opportunity to read. Thoughts on grieving. I didn't know that grieving is like buttoning my sweater. Each one a plea, a please God, a prayer pushed through its hole. The shore is in sight, and I take the 700 steps there downhill where a cable-laying ship has anchored overnight. Hope is all around. Look at the rhododendron's fierce winter buds, yellow stars growing in a green sky. The sheets on the line rejoice in the wind, in the November sun. Each peg a plea, a please God, a prayer. From the living room, I can hear my husband hum Jingle Bells. Annoying, but he's there for me. I know that the scar from last week's Mohs surgery will one day be barely visible. Still, it's so hard to throw off the covers in the morning and grope for my slippers scattered somewhere on the dark, cold floor. Thank you.
Ah, Judith, thank you. Lest we get too fantastical about poetry reading saving the world, I bet in the morning we'll all be groping for slippers, won't we? Next up is my compadre, Julia Chiapella from, oh, there's Abby. Right, let's pin. Hi, Abby. We always want to see you. Hi, hi. And there you are, Julia. Elegant and beautiful. Do you guys want to meet each other? Julia, Abby, Julia. There we
Hi,
go.
Abby.
Hi, nice to be back on.
Thanks, everyone, for all your words and all editors for putting this together. I'm really feel very fortunate to be here. I turn my phone off every night, and the night of the election, I turned it on at 2 o'clock in the morning to see the results because I didn't want to watch until then. And the first thing in my feed was that the largest voting bloc, white women, had helped elect he who shall not be named. And at 2 a.m., this is what came out, the first draft. To eat the insane root. After Lady Macbeth, November 6th, 2024. Oh, lady, in a country of many you work round the promised fire, consumptive, tell your name, your desire. See you, certainty, your long white dress trailing in suds left from all that washing. It's clear those hands will never be clean. Oh, lady, you are soaked in red 1,000 times down the halls, countless times in the dark. You have wound those hands through hair, through water, working for his bright ring. Because he spoke and you followed. Because all else was uncertainty. Because you wore terror like a halo. Oh, lady, when he carves his initials in your wrist, when the tides rise, take your children, and sky's sorrow fills the mouth with gray ash. Your appetite will erase future's gleam. And what you knew of duty's crushing gift the one you knelt to in surrender, in vanity, will rise in the wide profit of his dagger smile. Thank you.
Oh, man, I wrote that line too, Cynthia, because you wore terror like a halo. Fantastic. Our next reader is the editor of the book. It was her idea to make this happen. She gave me a call, I think it was the day after the election, and it's what Sam would have done, Sam Hamill. She's writing a biography on Sam Hamill as well. And she, more than any other poet alive, I think, is carrying on his legacy in the best way. The commitment to justice that is in her work and in her life, I think, really informs this book and has informed this whole process. What a delight it's been to work with Katie Sarah Zale.
Thank you, Paul. It is different this time. 6th November 2024, Tucson, Arizona. The mountains have stopped breathing. Unripe fruit fall, the orange trees lie fallow, and the snowbirds, black-eyed, white-tailed juncos, failed to come this year. I have grown tired. Time after time, as wind or whim destroys its weave, the spider labors with less heart. I sit in the night with Levertov. We watch a blue flash signal the last instant of sunlight. What's human here? What hope is here? She asks. My life's wounds gather as weight on my chest. Only a poet would say a wound is language that has lost all meaning. I long to bore holes in our words and let the silence out. How familiar this night. The same moon, the same stars, and a rustling in the wind. Yet tonight, I hear voices, a quantum connection from down the street, across the land and seas. I have never been so angry. I have never been so afraid. Thank you.
Of course, Miss Katie. So I'd like to introduce the next two, who are folks from my circles here in New York. Keisha Gay Anderson, who's a poet and an amazing artist as well.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here with all of you and hear all of you. This poem is called Be Fabulous. It's from my book, A Spell for Living. And I hope you all consider yourselves magician, because we need to make our own magic at this point. Be fabulous. I mean, stand up and say, I am without words. Know that you are moonlight, pushing aside the night, a hearth-warming chest into a wave of motion when grief slowly siphons breath. No need to scream about what is not or lament the crazy of they, the oldest tale of hungry chasing its tail. We are older than all that, before the buying and selling. Reluctant or not, we are creators of culture, purveyors of cool, distilled diamonds ditching the dirt of 1,000 long marches. Through manacles, cane, and cotton, assembly lines, back doors, only first name nannies, wet nurses whose own children rocked with rickets, medical guinea pigs, men who are always boys who are made the blame for a leaky economy built like a sieve in seismic ground. We've been around long enough to know that no man put salt in the ocean, that Nat Turner was speaking to God himself as himself and made those two selves agree to proceed with an overdue lesson. We are to lead even reluctantly because time breathes in and out on a scale the mind can't measure, but which the soul sees and plots a journey of light, sound, color, vibration, a path up and out for those trapped inside the smallness of things. So don't spend any time trying to convince me or her or them you're fabulous. Just be who you already are. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. And next, another sister in New York and fellow poet, Kim D. Brandon.
Hello, everyone. I'm reading a poem that talks about how we attempt to protect our children. And thank you, all the editors, for this opportunity, and especially thank you, Aaliyah. No matter what happens, don't move. My father gathered us together, his children, then gathered up all the rusty, dented, leftover cans of house paint from the hall closet on the floor. He heard them first before we saw them. The police were coming again, this time their sirens raging war, breaking the small fragments of peace found on the poverty line. Popping the lids off like flipping pancakes, them smelling like turpentine and burnt offerings, him pouring them over us, his children. Heavy globs dripping over us, coating everything below our crowns, our new and our hand-me-down clothes. He put his index finger to his lips to silence us, his eyes pleading, "Be still, my children, be still, be still." The door was pushed in, he was knocked down, punched, kicked, guns were jammed in his face, he handcuffed and dragged away from us. The paint dried. We had not been seen, had not been discovered. We are now the same baby blue from the bathroom walls, the same canary yellow from the kitchen walls, the same soft butterscotch gold from the living room walls, safe and invisible for the time being, as long as we don't move. Thank you.
Oh, God. Keisha Gay and Kim, thank you so much for bringing all that New York to us through Aaliyah. And next up is Lise Breaky for our Achy Breaky Hearts, followed by Lowell Murphy, and bringing some New Orleans to us, M.A. Nicholson. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, and thank you, Kim. That was a hard one to hear. Thank you very much. For years after she died, my grandmother danced up the dark stairs of her house on the lake and up the sunlit ones above the roof. Baking scents rose from the kitchen, her sewing machine whirred, while I read never written books in the never there attic. Once she held me when a dragon thrashed up the lake in a storm. Sometimes she was a bird circling the house. Sometimes she was the house. We all have that one father, brother, uncle, or mom wearing a beloved face, but tuned to a different channel. Once a carpenter, say, doing good work, but now with meme fungus, one of thousands marching, lines and hooks dug in our hearts, while radio QPR shouts, stolen, rigged. Boots, they say, broken glass, poisoned air, flying bullets. They say barricades are for smashing in the doors. One day, it wasn't me, but my daughter went over the river, through the woods, and then called me. It is dark. The way back is long. May I stay at grandmother's house? Well, a child may cherish birds, books, dragons, a house that is always safe. A parent must swing the axe. No, honey. No one who loves you lives there anymore. He says, I love you. His radio says, disease, slut, Nazi, traitor, libtard. He says, come see me. His God says, grab pussy. And wearing my grandmother's face, he made me kill her. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. That's beautiful. It's so, we said this yesterday, but to hear these poems come alive in the voices of the people who wrote them, after having read their work 3, 4, 5, 6 times, is just a really beautiful experience. Our next poet comes to us from beautiful Central Washington, Ellensburg. Lowell, are you in the house?
I am here.
He is the grant writer for the Cascadia Poetics Lab. What a joy to work with him in that capacity and also to be able to publish his fine work in this book. Lowell, welcome.
Thanks. It's an incredible honor to be here. Homework. 4 story problems for surviving winter in America. Problem 1. You dream we are standing beside lilacs. You awaken in a dry canal. You dream you are immobilized in sheath ice. You awaken to a hum in clover. Who is dreaming? What is waking? Who will decide for you? Problem 2. Fog depresses the ceiling, cutting off the top of Menashtash Ridge like a strip miner topping old Bald Knob. Mount Stewart waits for a strategic change in the way the wind is blowing, or, alternatively, a change in public perspective. Is waiting resisting? Is remembering resisting? Who needs a cup of my water? Problem 3. You look up, smiling from your phone's small screen, holding the rounded MRI image of your unborn grandchild's head. You see before you the sheeted body of a child in Gaza, headless. What question do you ask? Problem 4. A writing prompt. Post a letter of complaint to God. Return address 401 Dislocation Road. Yet, here you are, living on a path worn into sage and earth by feet and hooves of the Kittitas band of the Yakima Nation. They find your use of that word dislocation more disgusting than ironic. Your penance? Put the Bureau of Indian Affairs in charge of your health care. Thank you.
Thank you, Lowell. You have such a beautiful reading voice. And next up is M.A. Nicholson. I said she's bringing some New Orleans to us, but I believe you're also bringing some Utah to us in this poem, huh?
Yeah. This poem was written on the road. I'm honored to be here tonight. And honored to be from New Orleans, truly. And I see that every time I leave. In Ogden, I can do me. Leaving the North Rim behind to my east, the interstate takes on a new name, Grand Army of the Republic Highway, as I approach Crescent Junction, the Green River in wildfire haze. I am stuck traveling a loop, mulling over the years I have whittled away, pining for a reddish Moab view of arches, steps, isolated canyons, only to arrive, find the air is ghastly, a ghost film reeling, sick before and under my gaze. It has been days since I left the Delta. Days since my lover called but didn't leave a message. Days since it became clear I am actually on mute. I proceed through Mormon country, pass by their Salt Lake diminishing billboards presenting overblown images of very young women, smooth skin, white, blonde tresses, arguing for their rights, for plural marriage. And I will be turned away from the hotel where I made reservations, redirected to stay elsewhere, a room sharing a door with invisible migrant working women speaking an indigenous language muffled. I will continue with what I know. Lock the entrance, stand before the mirror, cast off my clothes, cast wild magic chaos upon their old world order. I am wordless action against this land's business of Mr. and Mrs., their commerce of yeses and nos. Thank
Tell
you.
it, M.A. Tell it. Thank you. Fantastic. Fantastic. The next few readers are Maria Massington and Mark Nowak and Matthew Cooperman and Monique Soria. But first, Maria, welcome to Winter in America again.
Thank you for having me from Wilmington, Delaware. I'm about 15 minutes outside of Philadelphia. Beheading of Buddha, November 5th, 2024. Our ginkgo tree had disrobed, a golden gown pooled around her trunk. A ceramic head lay on the bed of buttery fans, plump body intact 3 feet away, ass up in the lavender. What an unceremonious way to go after surviving a journey from the Valley of the Temples in Oahu to our City of Brotherly Love garden. The laughing statue held court between a bird feeder and a raised fountain that was bath for jays and juncos. He lost to a bully we had fought all year. A bandit raccoon pulled the suet feeder off its post and ran away with it. We tied a new feeder to the pole so he could not steal, then watched him nimbly unhinge the cage and take off with a wild bird peanut loaf. So, with a twist tie from a bag of rotten carrots, we wired the feeder shut. After a long night of TV news and doom scrolling, we looked on as he fussed in frustration, grabbed Buddha's face, and shoved him to the ground. As talking heads boasted in the background that we lost on every front, we fixed the only thing we could. With Gorilla Glue, we adhered the awakened one's head back onto his lotus-posed form, then rubbed his belly for good luck. Namaste, America. Thank you.
Oh, God, how do you know you've lost on every front when Buddha falls down on his face? That just upset me every time I read that, but what a poem. Next up is Mr. Social Poetics himself. And what better time to curl up with that book than now? I give you the esteemed Mark Nowak. How you feeling, Mark?
I'm feeling okay, thank you. So thanks to all the editors, Roxy, everybody, and tonight's readers. The poem I'm going to read is from a book of 5 Abecedarian prose poem sequences on Trumpism, mass shootings, and white nationalism that's titled, kind of like this book, again, The Last Word in MAGA, out from Coffee House next year. And this is the K poem. And even though I wrote it 2 years ago, it includes a gesture that Elon Musk used today. Any kind of king is still a king. Any kind of cadaver is still a cadaver. Death knows this, kinda. Undertakers undertaken it, kinda. Priests, kingmakers, queens kept by their kings. kinships, the king's ships, kingfishers, the kiss of death. Fly the flag with the king's name, break barricades and windows shouting the king's name, all hail, Sig Heil, Oye, Oye, our king. Mandarin-headed Mandarin, kiss the ring of the Kaiser, kiss the ring of Caesar, kiss the ring of the Tsar. Kamikazes, Kalishnikovs, any kind of king is still a caliph. Any kind of king is still a Khan. Death has known this for centuries. Centuries know this, kinda. Security guards secure it, kinda. Flags fly with the monarch's coat of arms, chanting the king's name, shrieking the king's name again and again. Trump Towers, Trump University, Trump National Golf Club, Donald J. Trump State Park. Repeat after me. Any kind of king is still a kingdom. Dukes, oligarchs, rise, repeat. Overlords, autocrats, dons. Any kind of king is still a king. Thank you.
Gorgeous repetition, Mark, not to mention alliteration, kissing, Kalishnikovs, caliphs, kinda. Very big. And speaking of big, we have a very big cover on Matthew Cooperman's newest book. He's up next. The air is not a perfume. The atmosphere is not a perfume and is odorless. Matthew has more books out lately than I can even mention. But Matthew, nice to have you here.
And my daughter Maya. Hello. Hello.
Oh, Maya. Hey, Maya. Oh, she's like, you can't.
Nope.
They can't have you, Daddy.
So yes, here's the big cover. And thank you to all the editors and thank you all the readers. This certainly is winter in America. It's 2 degrees here at Colorado. And it's a sobering day. So reminds me of the quote by Robert Duncan, who says, responsibility is the ability to respond. And I feel like this anthology embodies that in such powerful ways. So to keep fighting. Appears, disappears. Different world, what enables us to live and be a better race. The ordinary shoves up against the monumental. There, a summer darkness enlapses the city. A red fox appears, disappears. In the sulfurous glow, a woman cleans up a piece of cake. Our job is to be both epic and tiny. Between us, the partially obscured. Later, a sun over Maryland, and we neither mesmerized nor bored. Postcards, memories of crowds, not especially frightened. The little man sweeping the sidewalk. A local version of asymmetrical warfare. These things take time. We must attend and work. We cannot avoid global tensions, the harms of the various climes. We have many common causes here on Earth, poverty and privilege, both an inheritance of childhood. Water and the need for cake, we riot together and clean the streets. Goodwill on both sides, no sides. Our target was home and others. Now we are monsters, trumped of all concerns. Not everyone is a monster. Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that, Matthew. Thank you for that beautiful reading. And as I said before, much to our disappointment, Maxine Chernoff is not feeling up to attending tonight's reading, but I'm sure she'll come to another one. And please buy the book so that you can read her fabulous poem. And back to you, Paul Nelson, that is.
I think Aaliyah's got the next two.
Oh,
I got it. No, it's fine. Okay, so next on deck is Monique Soria and then Natalie Anderson.
Monique, if you're talking,
Monique,
we
are
can't
you
hear you.
here? Yeah, I'm looking for her. I don't see her. She may not be here. I don't see her. Okay, Natalie, thank you.
Hi, everyone. I want to thank all the editors and poets for amplifying this counter community. It really makes a difference. My poem, which is longish, How the Strong Man Goes, is part of a series examining the line between strong man as hero and strong man as dictator or warlord. So How the Strong Man Goes. At the last, they say, he bound himself upright, his sword arm scything, scathing, ravens circling, scattering and skirling, a cloudburst slewing, settling, steel glinting, a sharpened silence. That's the Irish hero Cuchulainn. Spied out, they say, like a spider by his web. Yanked out, they say, like a spider from his hole. Face filthy at the last with cobweb, beard grizzled, sisal thick. No safe anonymity, no plain white Oldsmobile. Saddam Hussein. Or shrouded grandly in the hero's tomb, force built by traitors captured in his civil wars. La caja or la faja, a coffin or a kudo. Now he gets both, sword ready on the altar, should the dead return. Federico Franco. Blinded, shorn, whipped and goaded, dumb as an ox and grunting gutturals, neck thickened beneath the yoke, bones straining forward the burden. At the last, they say, he stretched out his arms, embraced the eternity closest to his hand. Samson. The party sent to him in exile at the last, a 20-year-old female cadre for his bread. After the show trials, after the indictments, not even Abishag could warm him. Pol Pot. How had it come to this? Live lobsters airlifted, silver chopsticks, platform shoes. We called him dear leader, called him the red and rising sun. An ember in the center of our hearts, a new star constellated. Kim Jong-il. To keep you is no benefit, to destroy you no loss. Beaten by hoe, beaten by billhook, so as not to waste the bullets. He killed my ma, he killed my pa, but I will vote for him. To the end, he wore no glasses, lest he appear intelligent. Pol Pot, Charles Taylor. The shirt stitched stiff with intricate stitches, crusted white with what might have been starch, her eyes panicky, not quite meeting his, yet they say he pulled willingly over his head, her acrid doubt, her jealousy, the voluminous ferocity of her love. Hercules. After a light lunch, pasta, he remarked that lipstick comes from sewer grease, then kissed his new bride's lipsticked lips, fed her burnt and bitter almonds. A direct hit, clamored the Goebbels' smallest boy, thinking the shot a Russian bomb. Adolf Hitler. Fed poison like the rat he was, he could not speak, but lifted up his arm, lifted damningly his eye. No doctor for 2 days. They say the poisoner kissed the lifted hand, then when it dropped again, spat on it. Joseph Stalin. And when he found that carcass where bees had hived, out of strength, sweetness, he's reputed to have said, but I think intended rather, when this lion of a nation starts to rot, expect a world of stings. Samson as oracle. Thank you.
Wow. Beautiful piece. That's amazing. Such an honor to have that in the book. Thanks, Natalie. I think we're coming back to my part of the world, Pacific Northwest, for, I believe, Port Townsend resident. Do I have that right? Nina Burokas?
All right. Thank you very much, Katie, Paul, Greg, all the readers, all the editors. My poem kind of is channels some of what Keisha said, which is something to remember, is that we are all creators. It's called Writing the Resistance. I'm writing the resistance, a woman's work, like baking brownies and making bombs. That's it.
It's almost like the haiku writers. You want to hear it a second time. But
Oh
of
my
course you
God,
can
I
read.
forgot about that last line. We were like talking about that forever.
I know. It's amazing.
Oh,
Beautiful.
next, it's my pleasure to introduce Paul E. Nelson, right? Our everything in this space.
Thanks, Aaliyah.
Hmm.
I have 3 poems in the book, and last night I read the first, so tonight I'm going to read the second. And the Wanda referenced here is Wanda Coleman, and I miss her every day. I'll never forget talking about a previous president. She said, "I hope George Bush gets a bad pretzel." It was her prayer. I'll never forget that. Okay, winter in America again. Wanda's words were, when under the gun, who has time to keep a war journal? So lays down the task for reality government 2.0. WWF style FBI and CIA ought to scare the lion-hearted. Yet here we sit, wonder how the common people prosper, how withstand bomb cyclones of the atmospheric and cultural, make friends with all enemies within. We once called it intersectionality and found harmony lacking, though Brenda said Occupy gave us clues. In partial November sun, we seek allies. Winter's but one season, though this one's run set for 1,461 days, not counting the last days between the neoliberal and the WWFification of we the people. An eagle at Zazen's end in need of breakfast, past the candlelight guides Thursday meditation. Vow to harm nothing here. Vow to enter Dharma gates, one of which may be this winter again in U.S. America. This is not bottomless dark. There is no bottom, but sky. No, sky can't be nourished with what the small intestine won't need. No beginnings except after endings we must respect, choking on the fumes of the neoliberal. Du Fu watching the auras gold and silver grace nights. Michael reducing it to a grrr. Olson pleading the polis which he knew somehow in the 50s was eyes. Joanne in the Bolinas backyard quail counting the last days of eco-poetics. Worried nature poetry is Brenda's definition of eco-poetics, and with each whiff of worry redirected into the prayer rug, we remember our vow to free the numberless beings. The crow murder, hightailing it to the roost before the bomb cyclone. The Doug Fir smashing the empty Metro bus. Those who would guard congressional bathrooms rather than legislate for the polis. So goes the end of empire, which can't withstand the depths of the Aquarian age, or whatever juju stands in the way of he who won't be named and his cabinet of predators. My war journal has begun, as you are my witness, and as history attempts to repeat itself in the home of the brave. Thank you.
Oh, Paul. Nobody has done more for poetry in Seattle and all of Cascadia than Paul Nelson. And nobody has probably irritated Katie more than Paul and I while we edit and repurpose every song instead of editing. Okay, so many Pauls, so little time. I think I've already embarrassed the next one, Paul Hoover, by talking about his central place in our book. And I think his poem was one of the first ones we received. And I thought, what an omen to have received the one he's about to read to you. Paul.
Great, thank you. I wrote a series of poems based on the books of the Old Testament, particularly the Mad Prophets, the Desert Fathers. This is Signs and Wonders. If it is consistent, it is incomplete. If complete, inconsistent. Kurt Gödel. For it happens that they live in Bakersfield and the gardens of Coalinga, where they enter the rock and live in the rock and remain in the rock when they die. For their high-definition eyes are more than nature and art, and the dust of their seeing paints them from within. For they please themselves with images and images of images. Their lips are stung by bees. Their breasts yield no milk. The miser lies down with the master, the skinny clerk with the fat. For the land of plenty is the land of baristas, for their sisters work at Walmart and their unions are non-existent. They prepared the table with Popeyes, fueled desire with lottery tickets, and live forever downwind from the disaster. Signs of trees, but no trees. Images of water, but nothing clear to drink. They burn at the sight of beauty, are reckless without cause, rational without understanding. Among the owls and bats, they hang from buildings and bridges, for nothing has been saved for the winter, and summer is but half constructed. The possum dances with his mistress, as the priest with his god, the rabbit with his mechanic, as the needle with its habit. For a suckling child shall lead them through the streets of Mexico City. Though the amusements are shuttered, and the wind burns cold, the sands of Coney Island shall be flames of amazement. For when their forests are bare, a child will write them back into existence, one branch at a time, until the wilderness fills with words, and Gödel's theorem is enacted. Gödel is consistent. How shall we incomplete him? Gödel, Gödel, tea kettle. What was the future today? How can we be one now that mastery's gone? What rights must we wrong? What songs have we unsung?
That's gorgeous, Paul.
Thanks for including me.
We're such an honor to have your work in our book. Postmodern American poetry was tremendously influential on me too, and I'm really grateful that you're here.
Oh,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Our next poet is a person who really helped shape this book in such a beautiful way, including her network, including her poetry intelligence, which is in the 98th percentile in this world, I believe. She also worked her ass off in making sure that the poems were as close to how the poets intended them to be. She took great care in doing that. And I think for that reason alone, she deserves a very high place in this, but it's because she's a beautiful poet, a beautiful person, and such a joy to be with and present to you right now. Please welcome Roxy Power.
I can't read when I cry. And there's so many people that are still here, so thank you. Paul, thank you. Thank you for all of your collaborations. And Matthew, for reminding us that this is a somber day. I've had such a beautiful day at the People's March, and I tend to get sort of like snarkily funny, like I don't know if that's what this poem is trying to do, but I'll wake up tomorrow with a hangover of sorrow, I'm sure, but hopefully of joy too from being with all of you. This is called I Think We Have an Atmosphere. All weather is a prayer for causes deracinated from each choice. The economy, the podcasts, the broligarchy. The Keurig, the water bottle, the plastic tub once filled with spinach float now in our future. Nylon nets catch in the throat. Untangle that. Such interiority is generic now. If X-rayed, we'd all be a hose so tangled, we may end up united in the undertow just by chance. Inside our own weather, we tumble like semis down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, as they call I-80 in Wyoming, the Great Basin guffawing at all of us. The greenery changes with each new rest stop, like switching channels, as if we're in control. The upper registers of trees dance, watch over us in the gust. Can I dance with Republicans? Some prefer earth, wind, and fire, so yes? How it felt in 8th grade when you weren't quite cute enough and they made sure you knew. There's a standard poodle who knows how to win. It's my party. I'll incite if I want to. He did grab the wheel, but not hard enough. Noose waits for any flickering spectacle, a site specific. Installation, that's a missing word. I hope that's not missing in the book. Somebody edit that. A site-specific installation for a metaphorical neck. Hours. Neck of the other just hanging there. He did. Okay. You know what? I think this is a previously unedited poem. Sorry, everybody. But carrying on, the thinness of that stem holding up the flower. Let me start over with this particular stanza. Good Lord. It's why I can't sleep mornings, nor read poems at night. The thinness of that stem holding up the flower of my head as it sinks into the fog, willing to be shaped to the insurrection in one's mind. It leaves an imprint with clues for why they're clawing their way back to 1955, why we fetishize the moment between winning a war against fascism and walking the Cold War path toward it. Democracy by any other name. If you name it and arm it, your polis will hold in any storm, like a well-sprayed hairdo, an updo like Audrey Hepburn's or Lana Turner's, the B-52s after the damage was done. Who's belly laughing now? It's been a nice long sleeping ride in the back seats of their Cadillacs where we've been allowed to sit silently in their atmosphere, breathing their Marlboro air. After tapping on the wheel for a chance to drive, we were knocked back to the middle of last century, our pinafore horror frozen on faces that hadn't yet screamed at the Beatles, hadn't yet seen Emmett Till. Bodies exploded on nightly news, the bringing down of America so we could bring ourselves up. Thank you.
Oh man, can I dance with Republicans? And someone put a comment in there about a tango. It's a must look at. Next poet, Susanna Dykeman. Is it Suzanne or Susanna? I want to add Suzanne. Okay,
Thank you.
welcome.
I want to thank all the editors for putting this together with lightning speed. This reading has really been the perfect end and has sort of to this really difficult day. So I'm so grateful to everyone. The piece I'm going to read was originally written about the situation at our southern border, and it's been really hard, and I am afraid it's going to get worse. Earthquakes. When one child is taken, when all the children are taken away, when you must have the child, when the child's belly is empty, when your belly empties of child, when the trees continue to grow, so many shades of green, when morning birds sing their songs, I know none of them. When childhood left, when the heart is split, I want the hammer. I am the hammer that breaks the bars as the earth opens a crack to the gathered steam, untenable pocket of heat. As water rolls over the body, leaving salt on skin. As I write today's date, as I wrote the date when the child was taken, it is molten. The hammer is small. I swing my arm, aim beyond my hand. I keep swinging. When the children are taken, when the hammer sings the songs of unidentified birds, childhood broken, when childhoods are ripped away, when blood is disturbed in the fissure seeps. The hammer hits my nail. The bruise is not a hue of memory. The hammer strikes rock, hopes for a crystal center, when the children are returned, when the child will never come back, when the fissure will not close. As I walk around it, as we talk around it, the egg that has split, the baby that is made, the child we hold, the dimpled hand. Thank you.
Beautiful, Suzanne. Thank you for that poem. I mentioned haiku just a few minutes ago, and who showed up? Taryn Campbell, who has haiku in the book. Taryn Campbell from Seattle. Welcome.
There. I wanted to take a minute and mention Keats' notion of negative capability, which is the ability to live with ambiguity and unknowing and still find beauty and creativity and imagination, which I believe that this anthology is an embodiment of that, as well as this reading. And I also wanted to say that, our responses can come from that kind of creative and joyful place. Example of that right now is that as we're doing this on the University of Washington campus, there is an anti-trans speaker and the trans queer community is having a kiss-in. So there are lots of things that we can do. And I'm taking my moment here because as we know, haiku are very short. These are my 4 coup that are actually in the anthology. Election day, the flag at half-mast. Election post-mortem, one nation, so many countries. Electoral college, the long shadow of slavery. Unable to vote, the forest's deep silence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, just moving. And thank you for sharing what the other things that's going on, because we have to do our work, right? We have to do our work. So thank you for that. Veronica Eldridge.
Good evening, everybody. I know I'm the last reader tonight, so thank you for staying on, and thank you to Dr. Gabriela Gutierrez Simos for inviting me to send poetry to this anthology, and thank you to all the editors again for all your work in such a short amount of time. My poem is called When Ice Arrests Your Neighbor. When they arrest your neighbor, you won't find out until later that evening. As an aside, after talking with your vecina for half an hour, as her babies run up and down the stairs with delight. The cool evening air will not change. The nearly full moon will still hang in the sky like a glowing orb. The minutes will not slow nor quicken. We will still smile at the sweetness of children. When ice detains your neighbor, the sky will still be blue the next day. The apartment building will look the same, with its gray, dark walls and red doors that swing open from time to time. When your neighbor is arrested, they will come for him at dawn, before morning breaks, as he leaves for work like usual. The birds will sing this new day to light, as his hands are cinched behind his back, just past the bridge where they waited for him. The street bears witness in silence. When your neighbor is arrested, his wife will water the plants out front and wave to you, good morning, as you walk to your car. The sun will shine quietly, plants will whisper with the gentlest breeze. The sky will outstretch its clouds like the pink spine of a whale in flight. His disappearance won't appear on the news. You won't receive a red alert about the kidnapping of a middle-aged Mexican man. When you learn of his abduction, perhaps it was the hawk who screeched to first warn you of this injustice. As you drive, the street is the same as always, but you know that somewhere nearby, his children sit at home, weep into the dinner they cannot bear to eat without their papi. As days, weeks, and months pass, you think of him, living in limbo, 241 miles away from his family. A detention is an erasure, and yet your memory resists his removal. When they want his wide, shining smile to disappear into thin air, you don't let it. Thank you.
Gracias, Veronica. I'm so grateful you're here. What a great way to end the reading. That's fantastic. Gloria, I love what you said about Ginsburg. You say that Ginsburg said in Europa that poets should make more political poetry. The work read this evening would have made him profoundly happy. And I think it's a very easy thing to do, is to become rhetorical. And we tried our best. We even said in the call, no screeds. I think we had to put that in after we got one or two poems just to remind folks. But tonight is a great example of how you can be political and how it can be a poem and not a sermon, right? Even though there were sermonesque types of things, this is beautiful. It goes by so fast. I'm so grateful to all of you for coming tonight, everybody who had a part in making this happen. Greg Bem, who's published the book, please buy a copy. Buy two, give one to your friend. I want to thank the editors, Katie Serrazeo, Aliyah Abdullah Mata, Gabriela Gutierrez Simuz, I hope you're feeling better soon, Robert Lashley, who read last night, Roxy Power, C. Christy White, and Teresa Whitehill. What a team it has been. What a joy to work with all of you. And I'm so proud of this book. February 4 is a Tuesday night. We'll be reading at Seattle University. If you're in the Seattle area and you have work in the book, please get in touch with me. We'd love to have you read. So Gabriella's waving and she's going to be there. And Nina, I don't know if you're coming in from across the sound, but we would love to see everybody who's in the neighborhood to come here for that. We're working on other readings, including at Elliott Bay Books, the legendary independent bookshop in downtown Seattle and on Capitol Hill. Also AWP on Thursday night, the 27th, which is also the birthday of Brenda Hillman, and other readings as well. If you'd like to set one up, get in touch with the editors. Thank you all for being here, and hang in there the next 4 years. Think local. I mean, I think the kissing competition or whatever it was, I don't want to call it a kiss off, but I think those kinds of events I want to be part of. We have to be creative and we can't be like them. So.
Yeah, and if I may, I'd like to add one thing. I'm still thinking about what Taryn said about the diversity in the book. I mean, we worked very hard to get all aesthetic approaches to poetry. And you can imagine, I wonder with other anthologies that are put together that they end up with maybe 1 or 2 editors, and how we kept our 8. I mean, we worked very hard to listen to one another, even though, look at some and I go, well, I don't know. I don't know if I quite get that, but I learned so much. And that's, I think, my main takeaway from this, of how much I can learn from other poets about what they bring to, how they imagine the world and how they put language together in poetry. So I'm very proud of this book for that reason, that I think it is just so, brings so many voices and diverse ways of expressing ourselves about this issue. So again, I thank you for your taking the time to submit, and bless you for what we have.